Okay. Well,
Welcome to. Is it recording?
I thought you were getting ready to sneeze. I don't know.
No, I was going to say welcome.
Oh, I mean, yeah, we're recording. We're live right now.
All right.
There you go. See, I was waiting for the sneeze.
All right. Welcome to the Critical Christian Podcasts. We're your hosts, Dan
and Justin. We ask critical questions about the Bible and provide questionable answers. And just ignore the fact this week that Dan, despite it not being winter or anywhere near Christmas, is wearing a Santa hat, and even though he's indoors, is wearing sunglasses.
I can explain.
There's obviously a very good reason for both of these happenings.
I broke my regular glasses, and these are prescription, so I'm wearing these.
Makes perfect sense.
And also, I forgot to bring a hat, and Justin won't let me borrow any of his anymore.
I gave you a hat.
He's so tiny.
You said your head was too big to fit it.
Yeah, well, no, your head is just too small.
So you got a big head, is what you're saying?
No,
I heard that you had a big head.
Anyhow,
I feel like my hat would fit you if your head was normal size. So, anyways, you found a hat that did fit, which is now your hat.
I mean, you can have it back.
I'm gonna pass on that.
Okay.
But I mean, at least you found a hat, which would be much better than not wearing a hat.
Right.
And whatever you're thinking, he's not wearing a hat for the sole purpose of covering his baldness. That is not happening. I repeat, he is not wearing a hat to cover his baldness in order to prevent the situation in 2 Kings chapter 2 where a bunch of kids make fun of the prophet and call him bald and get killed by a bunch of lions. He's doing this for the kids.
For the kids, yes.
Obviously.
And I'm not bald.
Obviously not. I would never even suggest it.
Good.
With that, let's get right
in. With your perfect head of hair. All right, let's do it.
Let's get right into the passage.
Yeah, we got 46 verses. So we ought to just,
I'm sure we're going to fly through.
Oh, yeah.
So we're in Exodus 29 this weekend. We're covering some of the more riveting parts of Exodus, which is, vestments, utensils, and this week, consecration.
Oh, consecration.
I mean, that's just a word that rolls off the tongue. Don't you just wake up in the morning thinking about consecrating?
All the time.
It almost sounds dirty, but it actually
I
is
try to do it
opposite.
in the bathroom personally.
Sometimes you get backed up and you just
I
can't help it. I'm consecrated.
Right.
Yeah, I get that. Well, I mean, let's not be bashful about it. Let's dive right in. And in what might be a first, you've actually got the first 2 verses lumped into a reading before you got notes. Let's read 2 whole verses.
All right. Now this is what you shall do to them to consecrate them to serve as priests to me. Take 1 bull and 2 rams without blemish, and unleavened bread, and unleavened cakes mixed with oil, and unleavened wafers spread with oil. You shall make them of fine wheat flour. Go ahead.
I mean, listen, I kind of thought we were done with this whole unleavened bread crap.
Uh-huh.
It seems to me that it's coming back.
Why do you think that God doesn't like unleavened bread?
Well, here's the thing. My suspicion is it's as a reminder. But, as we discussed prior, it's possible he's just got a allergy.
I think that's it. He's got a gluten allergy.
Well, I mean, hold on.
What?
Yeast doesn't contain any gluten.
You know what? Ever. I'm just trying to be funny, but
I mean,
I should have fact checked it first.
I see what you're saying. I saw what you're trying to do.
I just assumed gluten is in the yeast.
Well, I mean, what we know about the God so far is that he clearly likes cleanliness.
Yeah.
Right. And so the fact that he may have an allergy shouldn't shock you as obsessive with cleanliness.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So, but here's the thing, though.
You got to bury your poop around them and everything.
Well, we're going to get to that, actually. We're going to mention that.
I thought we already got there.
We mentioned it once before. We're going to mention it again.
Important.
But so here's the thing, though. We mentioned previously that, some of the stuff in Exodus may have been like written in post, like explaining why things are the way they are.
Yeah, huh?
Is it possible that they had this long-running practice of using unleavened bread rather than leavened bread?
I mean, you could say that, but what I would say is, would they have that since yeast is so yummy?
Well, I'm gonna agree with
I
you
mean,
there.
I get the circumcision.
I mean,
You
have you
know,
had bread without yeast? It's a whole different
like
flavor.
pita bread,
It's very boring.
like pita bread.
Uh,
The pita
I guess
bread.
pita bread doesn't have any yeast, yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, the pita bread I don't think usually has yeast, and, obviously most crackers don't.
Right. Yeah,
But yeast does provide some flavor there that you when you don't have it, you notice it.
and it provides the bounciness. You know what I mean?
Bouncy bread's where it's at.
A lot of food is in the texture. You know.
Mhm, mhm. That's why, God never commanded them to eat mushrooms. He understands there's some texture issues there.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah. Trust me, we both appreciate
Like,
that.
what would you prefer to eat right now? A donut or a sucker that is donut flavored?
Well, to be fair, a donut is closer to God diet than most of the nonsense. Well, did God ever ask for vegetables?
Um, uh, no, but
Not really.
no.
I mean, grain, right?
Some of the first fruits.
God never asked for no dang carrots.
You know what? I don't know. I mean, what did Abel give God?
Well, I mean,
It
produce
certainly
was from the
wasn't
field.
animals at the time, right? They
Right,
weren't
right.
doing
Yeah.
that thing.
Most likely grain.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
I bet there were some vegetables. Grain is
Maybe.
kind of a vegetable in a way too.
A little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hold on. We're getting way off the beaten path, but this does bring up a question like, what the hell? What a vegetable and a grain aren't technically the same thing.
I know, but if you had to put them somewhere, you're not going to call it a fruit.
I agree. If it's going to be something, if you have
Fruits
to,
are sweet.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And God does like fruit. He wants pomegranates inside of the temple.
Actually, yeah, that's true.
So
Yeah.
have some of that.
Yeah.
Anyways, the long and short of it is,
Mm-hmm.
okay, the lack of leaven, a little bit unexpected at this point,
Mm-hmm.
unless he just really wants to hammer home this whole "you fled from Egypt really fast in the night."
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Oh, I'm sure there's more. I have to read my notes.
Sure.
So
Is it hard in sunglasses?
No, your screen is very bright.
Those
So
might
it's
be
okay.
the thickest sunglasses I've ever seen. I've never seen prescription sunglasses.
Thanks. This isn't a compliment.
I'm just saying they're
Yeah.
pretty thick. I mean, it looks dope though. You look like a cool Santa.
I do like a bad.
It's a shame your beard doesn't grow in white and like long and ZZ Top.
Yeah,
Like,
I
you know.
get it. All right. So ChatGPT says the reason for God's aversion to yeast is because it symbolizes sin and corruption. Hey, shut up. And how it spreads and affects everything it touches.
Mm-hmm.
What? That makes sense. Yeast spreads.
Yeah. So
That was the whole thing.
so does water.
You can't go without water, you'll die.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
But why does one symbolize bad, one symbolize good?
Well, also because, as you said, it's a reminder of how quickly they had to leave Egypt. So quick that they didn't have time for their bread to rise.
That's really what it's about. Yeast doesn't symbolize sin.
I mean, it can have more than one symbolizing.
Certainly not.
Really? It can only ever have one.
Well, it can have multiple. You have to have a reason for it.
I just did.
You can't just say that it's true because it's true.
No, because it spreads and affects everything it touches.
So
That was it. That was my reason.
so sin spreads?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, okay. But goodness doesn't spread? Pay it forward isn't a real thing?
I mean, badness seems to spread more.
Who decided that yeast was going to be the symbol of sin?
I got a feeling it was God. Right?
You know where this nonsense talking point comes from?
Where?
Do you?
Yeah, the computer ChatGPT.
Where did ChatGPT get it from?
How would I know?
I don't know why you trust ChatGPT with anything.
Uh-huh.
It's worse than the Message Bible.
Yeah. I mean,
There's one
uh,
verse in the New Testament where Jesus uses yeast as a metaphor. He says, "Beware of the yeast of the Pharisees," referring to their hypocrisy
mhm,
that it spreads.
yeah.
But Jesus uses a lot of things as metaphors in the New Testament. You can't just say, "Well, now every time we hear this word, it must mean or symbolize the thing that somebody else 1,000 years later used a metaphor for." Not really proper way to interpret
I
things.
think I'm gonna go with the computer on this one, you
I
know?
don't think you should, because
He
what you're suggesting is that God, 1,500 years before Jesus came to the earth and said anything about yeast,
Yeah,
is playing on a metaphor that didn't exist yet.
that's hard to believe. I
Silly
mean,
is
if
what it is.
anybody could do that, it would be God.
I'm saying it's silly. Doesn't make any sense. It wouldn't make any sense to the people there.
God lives outside of time.
God still lives in rationality.
It doesn't have to make sense to those people.
It does have to make sense to them. They're the
It
ones following it.
makes sense to the readers later because we get to go,
Listen to what you're
I
saying.
don't wanna.
Because in your worldview, these laws, these rituals went away with Jesus, which means they were literally only applicable during a time period in which nobody could ever know what they meant. And then the minute people are like, "Oh, now I know what it meant," they're gone. They don't even have to follow it anymore. It's just a nonsensical view to have.
I concede the point. All right.
Okay. Verses 3 and 4.
uh, yes. So I was gonna say something.
Right.
So when this was written, this was the ritual for consecration.
Sure.
They were doing sacrifices,
Mhm.
what have you. So I guess it's a very good thing. Jesus came on the scene, or else we'd still be sacrificing animals to atone for our sins.
If there was a temple, then the Jews would have to. It's not really expected in the Old Testament that all of the foreigners would have to,
Yeah, but why not?
because they're not part of the covenant. Now, foreigners could if they wanted to. For example, if you read Isaiah 56, he says the foreigners who joined themselves to the Lord, their sacrifices will be accepted on my altar, those who hold fast to my covenant and obey my Sabbaths.
Yeah.
And then in Jeremiah, and also in the book of Ezekiel, if you go to Ezekiel chapter 44, the first 12 verses, it talks about foreigners in the New Jerusalem that are going to come and worship Yahweh in Jerusalem. Talks about how they're going to participate in the sacrificial system with
Yeah,
the
well,
Israelites.
the what you said, people that you know what? Repeat the thing you said.
Okay, so there's kind of two things
No, don't
happening.
say two. Just say the first thing.
Well, the first thing is Isaiah 56.
Yes.
Okay. In Isaiah 56, it talks about foreigners who are going to join themselves.
Okay. Join themselves to the Lord.
Yeah.
That clearly means become a Christian, right?
No.
You know what I mean.
No.
Become a God follower.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yahweh.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, God follower.
Yeah.
Well, so I feel like that's that's the same thing as the Jews.
Yeah, it is. That's what I'm saying. So here's kind of the hurdle between Jews and Christians is during the Messianic age throughout the Old Testament. So you'll read Isaiah 65, Isaiah 66, Ezekiel 40 and beyond, Jeremiah 33, Isaiah 56, and a bunch others. They envisioned and talked about the Messianic age as though all the sacrifices and offerings are going to continue. And the foreigners who worship Yahweh, many of them will offer sacrifices with the Jews and participate with the Jews in the sacrificial system, even though they won't be bound necessarily to that covenant because they weren't part of the original covenant. They can choose to enter into that covenant, but they'll still be judged based on their righteousness, not based on whether or not they wanted to be part of the sacrificial covenant. The problem we have in the New Testament is Jesus doesn't really move that goalpost. He leaves that in place in Matthew chapter 5. He says, "Do not come to do not think that I've come to abolish the law, but I've come not to abolish, but to fulfill. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth pass away, not a single letter, not a stroke of a letter will pass away from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever teaches the law, or whoever, what do you say? Whoever teaches others to not follow the law would be called least in the kingdom of heaven, and whoever does the law and teaches it would be called great in the kingdom of heaven.
Mm-hmm.
So we have this idea all the way up through Jesus that the law is good. It's not until you get to the writings of Paul that Paul's like, "Oh, no, 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 the law is temporary. You don't have to follow the law." In fact, Paul says in Galatians chapter 5, if you take on the mark of circumcision, Jesus Christ is of no use to you. He's useless to you now. You are now liable to the whole of the law. And he says in Galatians chapter 3, verse 23, that the law was only until Christ came. This seems to be in contradiction with what the Old Testament says and with what Jesus says. Now, there is one other viewpoint. For example, it seems, according to the book of Acts, that the law was done away with as well, or at least we'll say the dietary laws were done away with, like the clean and unclean animals. This is in agreement with Mark. In Mark chapter 7, Mark himself comments on something Jesus did, or whoever the author was. They comment on what Jesus is doing, suggesting that the clean and unclean animal laws are now done away with, but not the laws pertaining to like righteous living and sacrifice and things like that. So we've got a little bit of movement in the New Testament outside of Jesus's own words, suggesting that the law is somehow being abrogated in one way or another. And this seems to be in contradiction with what the Old Testament says about the law. And so there's a little bit of tension there between the New Testament and the Old Testament as to whether or not the law was temporary or permanent.
Yeah.
Because in Deuteronomy it says to follow the law forever. Deuteronomy 11:1,
Mhm.
Deuteronomy 12:1, Deuteronomy 12:28, so on and so forth. There's a bunch of verses that say that the law lasts forever.
But on the opposite side, we have the heretical writings of Paul.
Yeah, and the book of Hebrews, because the book of Hebrews goes out of its way to agree with Paul.
Well, who wrote Hebrews?
Well, we don't know.
I thought it was Paul.
Well, people think it's Paul. It sounds like Paul,
And he
but
probably
we don't
agrees with
really
himself.
we don't really know. But anyways, the book of Hebrews definitely agrees with Paul on this particular matter. Um, the long and short of it is, though, if the Old Testament is correct about what to expect during the Messianic age, then it would seem to suggest that sacrifices and offerings, as long as there was a temple, would continue.
All right. What if there's no? So it's contingent upon there being a temple?
Well, yeah. So what happens, and we haven't got to Leviticus yet. In Leviticus, it looks forward to when there's going to be a physical location permanently for God's presence in Zion. And then when you get to the historical books, we learn about how God establishes that temple in Jerusalem, and that is now de facto the place where everyone is supposed to give their offerings and sacrifices. You're not supposed to just give them anywhere anymore. You're supposed to give them in Jerusalem. So if there's no temple, there's no offerings and sacrifices, which is why during the Babylonian exile, people were finding alternative means to enhance their acts of righteousness,
Okay.
because they were lacking the ability to give offerings. Now, that doesn't mean they were condemned to hell or anything like that. The offerings and sacrifices has nothing to do with their salvation, by the way.
Okay.
And this is a big misconception about the Jewish faith. You didn't get to heaven, or you didn't get the resurrection of the righteous just because you gave God barbecue. That wasn't the point, right? Uh, the point was that was like the token of your heart position towards God. And so prayer became important. Giving of alms to the poor became important, things like that. And so it wasn't that like you had to follow the law perfectly, and if you could do so, then you'd go to heaven. The goal was just to be a righteous person, and as long as your righteousness exceeded your unrighteousness, you would go to heaven, or you would be resurrected with the righteous. This later development that came along suggesting that if you were unrighteous, you might not be part of the resurrection, or you might actually end up in a place of torment.
Yeah.
That's a much later Jewish thought that doesn't really come along until, we get this idea of Hades from the Greeks.
Mm.
But even in the Jewish literature, the earliest Jewish literature that deal with it, people that go to Hades because they're bad,
Yeah.
they only go for a period of a maximum of 12 months.
Hmm.
It's not eternal conscious suffering. That's merely an invention of people from the first century.
That would be a bit ridiculous to be suffering forever.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
how you can believe that and be a Christian, I'll never.
It is kind of a weird thing to think that you, an all knowing entity, could punish anybody with eternal suffering.
Yes.
Or why would they even want to? Yeah, like, could you is there for example, I know you're around kids that are disobedient and unruly,
Yeah.
because you're a teacher, but, like, no matter what your kids do, you would never send one of them to eternal torment by flames, right?
Not eternal.
Exactly, not eternal,
I
it's
mean,
crazy.
maybe for a while.
Yeah, right. So, like, I get the idea of, like, hey, bad people need punished, but, like, eternity is a long time.
I think people don't understand how long it is because we can't as humans,
Right. It's silly to think that anybody is being tortured for eternity, especially
Yes.
when um the the torture seemingly, if you take the whole Bible into account, is not entirely their fault.
Yeah.
There's a lifetime of inputs that goes into somebody's
Well,
brain.
and more to the point, if we think that God is, he knows everything, he probably should have just not had the people who are going to hell be born in the first place.
Right.
That's kind of messed up.
Yeah, if God knit everybody in their mother's womb, and according to Romans chapter 9, created some vessels to be vessels of wrath, seems weird that he would punish somebody for eternity for being the thing he made them to be. This is an irrational thing.
Right.
Yeah. But all that being said, right, we're on, sorry, I got carried away there. Verses
So
3 and
without
4.
without the temple, the Jews don't have to sacrifice anything either.
They don't have to.
Yeah,
But they would like to get the temple back and reinstitute the
why
sacrifices.
can't, I mean, what did they do before there was a temple? They did sacrifice, correct?
Yeah, so when they got into the land, they did sacrifices and offerings in their various locations.
And why do they think that they're not expected to just go back to that after temples?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, the goal is to do what God last told them to do, which was only sacrifice in the temple.
But it seems like it should be obvious that if you can't do that, you should go to the thing God told you to do before the last. Or
Well,
am I wrong?
I don't disagree, because they are still doing the festivals.
Okay.
So, for example, the Passover festival, they're still practicing that inside and outside of Jerusalem. Like, they're not all traveling to Jerusalem to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So, even after the destruction of the temple, people are doing the festivals, but the actual sacrifices of the animals seems to have stopped when they were driven from the land. In 70 CE, the Romans destroyed the temple, and then in 136, they were basically so far removed from Israel that the Romans were able to rename it. That's how it got renamed, from Judea to Palestine. Was 136. Hadrian drove them out.
It's in the Bible or in the history?
It's in history. Yeah, you can read about the Bar Kokhba revolt and what Hadrian did to the Jews after the revolt.
Oh,
It's pretty wicked, actually. It's said in one of the histories that there was so many Jewish slaves from the crackdown by the Romans that they couldn't even find buyers for them. That's how many people were captured and made slaves.
a lot.
A lot of
That was
people.
beef. Wait, when was that?
It was
Because they were already slaves for 400 years, right?
the revolt from was about 132 to 135 ish
Okay.
in there.
They were slaves for 3 years?
No, they were in revolt for 3 years, and then 135, 136, the Romans came in and finished the job.
Oh. And how long were they slaves then?
until they died.
Oh, but it was just that generation.
Yeah,
Okay.
because a lot of them left. No one stayed.
Okay.
If you stayed, you were dead. Like you weren't gonna stay there. It's kind of like uh, if Russia decided that it was gonna bring it. I don't know how many people. There's like almost 100 million people in Russia, right? So imagine Russia just said, "I'm gonna bring 50% of the population. I'm just gonna bring 40 million people into Ukraine, and
Mhm.
we're just gonna take it over." Well, Ukraine's a pretty small population. Like a lot of them are just gonna be like, "Yeah, I'm out. I'm
Mhm.
gone. I'm not sticking
Mhm.
around for this."
Mhm.
Kind of like that. Rome had had enough. They said, "You're no longer managing yourself. You're no longer going to have your own provincial rulers.
Mm.
We're annihilating you. We're making it illegal for Jewish people to exist." They even outlawed Jewish writing.
Oh.
Like you couldn't even own a Hebrew text. You weren't even allowed to.
But they weren't trying to kill them, right? They were just trying to get them out of there.
Both.
So the Jews were allowed to leave. Right?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you were fleeing the country, chances are that like
Okay with that?
they weren't like setting up shop and murdering people on the way out.
Okay. I mean, I think Germany did that, right?
Well,
So I mean, yeah,
yeah, they did.
right. They didn't just say, "All right, we just don't want you."
Right.
So I was thinking maybe the Romans did the same. So if the Jews don't recognize Jesus as their savior, then they should be continuing to sacrifice animals. Except there's no temple, so they have this loophole. Is
E
that right?
essentially, I know a couple Jewish rabbis, and they agree that once the temple returns, that the sacrifices and offerings are gonna return. But, like, obviously, they don't think that the resurrection of the righteous is contingent on whether or not people are sacrificing animals.
They just build a temple.
They
They build it.
don't have access.
Where is it?
Well, it's split between 3 different communities. They've got only access to part of it. Part of the temple area is owned by Islamic faction.
Okay.
Part of it is owned by a Jewish faction. I forget who actually has access to the third.
What, they just have deeds somewhere that say this is our property, or?
Oh no, but Jerusalem's a holy site for the Islamic faith too.
Oh, is it?
Oh yeah. So they basically split the baby in half basically and said you get half and you get the other half. And so because they don't actually have the Jewish people don't really have full access to rebuild where the temple is supposed to be,
Mm-hmm.
kind of in limbo. Although my understanding is that, I mean, we don't know exactly where the original temple was. It's possible that they can just rebuild it someplace close if
Mm-hmm.
they really wanted to. I just don't think that. I think they want to build it in a precise location.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because if all they needed was a location in
Right.
Israel, they could have
Yeah.
done it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I feel like they're just making excuses.
Yeah.
I don't know. It feels like they could just build it up again,
Right. Right.
or sacrifice in other locations.
But we'll see in this chapter, God says that these sacrifices,
Mm-hmm.
these are perpetual instructions. These are not instructions that are going to go away.
I guess it's just for the Jews then, because if all Christians were sacrificing animals, that would be a lot of sacrifice, right?
I think it would be impractical and silly. Yeah. One thing I would note before we move on to verses 5 through 9 is that
3, but yeah.
I thought you just read 3 and 4.
No,
We didn't read that yet.
that was 1 and 2.
Oh, I thought we read 3 and 4 already.
No, we've been talking a lot.
I guess we should read 3 and 4.
Oh no, you were gonna say
Or we
something.
just spend a half hour on verse 1 and 2.
So what?
We're never gonna finish this chapter.
So what?
All right, read 3 and 4.
And you shall put them in one basket, and present them in the basket along with the bull and the 2 rams. Then you shall bring Aaron and his sons to the doorway of the tent of meeting and wash them with water. Because again, this is apparently the current ritual.
I mean, most likely.
Okay, so because I know that we have at this point decided that these books were written by the priests, at least.
Yeah, it seems that way.
Okay. I know there's some debate concerning the whole documentary hypothesis, and I guess some of it could have been written by the Deuteronomists.
It's possible.
Yeah. I would love someone to give me a reason to not believe in the documentary hypothesis, though, because it seems like it fits better than anything else, especially the idea of Moses writing, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the documentary hypothesis has that staying power because it so well explains the phenomenon that we see in the text.
It's just, we're critically looking at this, and so maybe we should look at the other theories, but I don't know if there are any that are worth looking at.
There's no, I mean, we basically went from Moses wrote it to Moses wrote it and then some people updated it. Then we went from that to documentary hypothesis. That's about how we went. And the documentary hypothesis has a couple different forms. There's the fragmentary hypothesis. There's also the I forget one of them. Supplementarian process hypothesis. Supplementarian, there we go.
Sublimation?
Not sublimation, yeah. The supplementarian. So there's a couple ways to do the source theory, but the fact of the matter is we're dealing with multiple sources that have been stuck together.
Yeah.
If one person sat down and wrote this, it would be a nonsensical way to write.
Yeah. Right.
Especially with all the doublets and contradictions that we'll find. One thing that was interesting here is Moses, Aaron's sons are mentioned, but they're not named in this chapter.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Because they will be.
Right.
All right, then.
Wait, no.
They never will be.
They will be.
They will be.
Not in this chapter.
Not in this chapter.
And you actually never guess which one of Aaron's sons shows up next.
Well, it's probably her, right?
We actually don't hear about Aaron's sons again in this book.
Okay, I don't know, dude. Don't ask me these questions.
Remember last week there was one of Aaron's sons that just popped up and we're like, who the hell that guy?
Yeah.
He's the only one that shows up in the book again.
Oh, what's his name?
Is it Ithmus or something?
Oh, the little one, yeah.
Yeah, what was his name?
The youngest one.
Yeah, now I get yeah, it was the youngest one. Let me see. I don't know if I noted it anywhere in my notes. But anyways, the one son that no one's ever heard of from last week's chapter is the one that gets mentioned again. He gets mentioned again in like chapter 38.
Okay.
Somewhere in there. And he seems to be in charge, which makes sense because if you're reading Leviticus chapter 10, right after the priests are consecrated, which we don't get the story in Exodus, but right after the priests are consecrated, Aaron's two sons, Nadab and Abihu, are killed.
Okay.
And that leaves Eleazar and was it? I'm gonna go back one chapter and get that guy's name.
It's like the first or second sentence of that chapter, right?
Yeah, it was. It's on the tip of my tongue. What was his name?
Look at this.
Ithamar.
There's the first one.
That was it.
Ithamar.
Okay, so Ithamar is apparently, according to Exodus chapter 38, seems to be taking command.
Okay.
Once Nadab and Abihu get whacked by God.
Oh. Okay. Were they the ones that got drunk?
Yeah. Offered the unholy fire.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're gonna have a bad day.
Oh yes. But then they'll be sent to an eternity of heaven, right?
I don't really know.
Yeah, I know that. That's the part I don't know.
I mean, my understanding from the Bible is that you don't go to heaven when you die. You go to the ground, and then you're resurrected on the last day.
Okay, but to be fair, if you're dead in the ground, time doesn't mean anything. So it should be instantaneous from your view, right?
Hmm? Yeah, it's basically like flipping a light switch, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like you ever those people that get cryogenically frozen.
Yeah.
People wonder what that would be like. Well,
Hmm.
if it actually works, and I don't know
It
if it
doesn't.
would work, but if it did work,
Mhm.
my assumption is that you would go to bed and immediately wake up thousands of years later,
Right. Yeah.
just by like flipping a switch. But could you imagine for a second something went wrong, the cryogenic freezing,
Uh-huh.
and your consciousness remained on, and you're just trapped inside your body for thousands of years?
Oh, I see.
Oh, that would be a fate worse than hell. I don't know if it would be, but it just sounds like it sounds horrific.
I read a book once about time travel,
Mhm.
and the way the guy traveled back through time was that he was in suspended animation, and he went back in time uh, the same amount of time he wanted to go back in time.
Obviously.
What I mean is, but he was conscious. He was aware of what was going on, but he couldn't move. And if he wanted to go back in time, like 40 years, he would have to stay there for 40 years.
What? Why?
That was just how the guy invented time travel.
It sounds hideous.
Yeah, it was a great book.
I don't think I'd go back in time if I had to sit there and endure it in reverse.
Yeah, the guy didn't realize what was going on.
Well, everything's happening in reverse.
Yeah, yeah,
Hard to understand what's
it
happening.
is. It was a good book. Uh,
Conversations be hard to follow that way.
my wife would tell me what it was, but not me.
Sorry.
It was like all our yesterdays, all are wrong yet, all are wrong todays. There it is. We got it.
These are the days of our lives.
That's what it is. It was a soap opera.
Like sand in an hourglass.
Uh-huh. All right, I guess we better hurry.
Verse 5 through 9.
All right. And you shall take the garments and put on Aaron the tunic and the robe of the ephod and the ephod and the breastpiece, and wrap his waist with the silkfully woven band of the ephod. And you shall set the turban on his head and put the holy crown on the turban. Then you shall take the anointing oil and pour it on his head and anoint him. You shall also bring his sons and put tunics on them, and you shall wrap their waists with sashes. Aaron with his sons, and fit caps on them, and they shall have the priesthood by a permanent statute. So you shall ordain Aaron and his son.
Delightful.
So there's really nothing going on here. It's just, God giving, or Moses, somebody giving Aaron and his Nepo babies authority over everyone else, right?
Yeah, remember last week we read about all the garments and the clothing?
Yes, I remember.
Well, this week those same garments and clothing are given to the priest. The only thing really interesting
Amazing.
here is like the really special stuff, like the tunic and the turban and the fancy sash and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't explicitly tell you this, but it's going to Aaron, and he's the only one that's going to get the fancy parts
Oh, is that right?
because he's the high priest.
Oh,
So, like, he gets the fancy stuff, and the other priests, everyone who's not Aaron, is gonna get like generic stuff. They're just gonna get like a fine linen.
his sons?
Yeah,
Oh, is that right?
yeah. Not everybody gets the really cool breastplate with the turban that's got the thing around it and the beautiful sash and all that stuff. Not everybody gets that. Just the high
It
priest.
must feel special.
But what that tells us, which is really important, because here's the crazy thing.
Yes.
You've probably heard people mention the phrase high priest, right?
Yeah.
The idea of a high priest, while almost everybody assumes is in the Old Testament,
Uh-huh.
you won't find it in the Old Testament very often. Almost never.
Okay.
Like if you go to the Hebrew phrase for high priest and search for it in the Old Testament, you're not going to find it.
Well, didn't you just mention it just now?
I did,
All
but
right.
the words high priest did not appear. What I'm saying.
He's just not called a. He's just called a priest, or
Yeah, they just call him priests.
and we just assume he's the high priest.
Yeah, we are using our powers of cultural interpretation to say that Aaron was the high priest. There's not a lot of times in the Hebrew Bible where you can say there's an explicit reference to here's the high priest and here are the other priests.
With the underlings.
Yeah, you kind of have to read between the lines most of the time. But by the time we get to the New Testament, the idea of a high priest is everywhere.
Okay.
Because the reason why this is the case is because by the time we get to the Hasmonean dynasty, after they threw off the rule of the Greeks and they set up their empire again, the idea of a high priest became like a political office.
Oh.
So it was already a very important role before then.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, it became a highly coveted and contentious thing to hold because the high priest, even when the Greeks were, what's the word? I don't want to say oppressing, occupying. When the Greeks were occupying Judea, the Greeks were even like deposing high priests and putting somebody else in its place that will do their bidding. It became more of a political role than just a religious role. So the role of the high priest was everybody was hyper aware of in Jesus's time, whereas the role of the supposed high priest in the earlier portions of the Old Testament weren't quite as critical. You know, like nothing really hinged on the high priest role like it did during the first century. So all that to say this, as we go through the Old Testament, you're not going to find a lot of references to somebody being the high priest, but this is how you would know. The guy who had the garments of the high priest.
That makes sense.
Right.
So I understand Aaron being a priest. You know, he seems like a good guy. But why do we know his children are going to be worthy of being, well, you know how it is, how we've seen time and again that simply being related to somebody righteous doesn't make them righteous themselves. And of course, you just mentioned that his sons get smitten or smoted. So I think that kind of proves my point, even if I didn't really know that, you know? So here's a question. The people that, the priestly source, like, were they just trying to figure out how their line of priests came to be? Like, my guess is they identify with Aaron's ancestry and wanted to legitimize themselves. I don't know.
Yeah, actually, that's a prevailing view.
Oh.
In fact, there's definitely some discussion as to whether or not there was competition between the Zadokite priests and the Levitical priests in real life that led to the backstories that we have in the Bible. We'll learn about the Zadok later. But yeah, it seems to be that this is the explanation for the Levitical priests existing. And we've observed already up to this point, God definitely likes to favor lineages, even if lineages are corrupt in later generations.
Yeah.
And you kind of brought up something that I put in my notes as well, which is it's kind of odd that Yahweh would even go through this whole consecration process, knowing that the very next thing that's about to happen is he's gonna have to kill two of them.
Right. Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't he just say, "Hey, listen, don't make these two priests. If you make these two priests, I gotta kill them." You see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
it feels like if he's going through all this trouble, why wouldn't he just say, "Also, by the way, these chuckleheads here can't be priests." It's just kind of a weird thing, you know. Here's a crazy thing to think about, though. You know, and I've mentioned this before. You know, I personally believe that most of these stories come from real life events. I just don't think that they what happened in real life is comparable the way the Bible tells it, but like there's no reason for Leviticus to include the story of Nadab and Abihu unless there were actually two priests at some point in time they got killed in a fire
Mm-hmm.
while offering incense, right? So like, but if you think about how that might have actually played out in real life,
Mm-hmm.
kind of horrific scene to wake up to. Like somebody walks into the tabernacle, time to get my morning offering on, and lo and behold, there's these two dudes just burnt to a crisp.
Mm-hmm.
Like, holy crap, what a horrible thing to walk into.
Mm-hmm.
I could imagine why you would write it down. Like, holy shit, God was pissed. I mean, did you see what happened to these guys? They're charcoal.
So they had to figure out some reason, right?
Right.
Yeah. It'd just be like, this happens sometimes.
Now, in the story, they're drunk.
Right.
And we learn that, God breaks out the fire of God breaks out against them because they came in and were drunk and made unauthorized fire. But the reality is, even from my point of view, from a perfectly naturalistic point of view, it seems really likely that two young drunk priests went in there acting like goofballs and just lit the place on fire and got themselves killed. That's a super believable story.
I mean, there's a lot of fire in there.
Yeah.
Flames.
Yeah, it wouldn't be hard to light a tent on fire.
And I mean, alcohol is flammable, right?
Yeah. I mean, it seems likely that somebody at some point got themselves killed.
Yeah.
And like, well, gotta include this in the book. Fuck around, find out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like of the wild stories of the Old Testament, I feel like some of these stories, like the sons of Aaron getting killed, they sound really true. Like, or else there's no good reason to include that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know.
Doesn't really paint anybody in a good light, does it?
No.
Yeah.
You've probably heard of the criterion of embarrassment.
Yeah.
Yeah, stories that include embarrassment are more likely to be true.
Right.
I kind of believe that
Mm-hmm.
to be the case. Should we read 10 through 14?
Sure.
Okay.
Then you shall bring the bowl in front of the tent of meeting, and Aaron and his sons shall lay their hands on the head of the bowl, and you shall slaughter the bull before the Lord at the doorway of the tent of meeting. Then you shall take some of the blood of the bull and put it on the horns of the altar with your finger, and you shall pour out all the rest of the blood at the base of the altar. And you shall take all the fat that covers the entrails, and the lobe of the liver, and the two kidneys, and the fat that is on them, and offer them up in smoke on the altar. Getting hungry here. All right.
I know.
But the flesh of the bull and its hide and its refuse you shall burn with fire outside the camp. It is a sin offering. Wait, so which one is a sin offering? The hide or the refuse?
Neither.
What is that right there?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. It's a summary statement
Oh,
for the whole paragraph.
the whole thing is a sin offering.
Yeah, the bull is the sin offering, but you can't burn the dirty parts, like the parts like the skin and the dung.
The skin is dirty.
Well, yeah, like the outer portion of the and you'll find this in Leviticus too, like the outer portion and like the legs are to be taken somewhere else and dealt with.
What do they got against legs?
Have you ever seen how animals live? Ever seen a cow in a cow pen? Stepping in their own dung all the time.
Oh, well, I mean,
No, you're gonna you gotta skin the thing anyways. So you just skin the animal, clean it out, and throw away the dung and anything else that was, unclean, and keep the clean part.
so no legs.
A lot of times, legs were done away with.
Oh,
Besides,
so-
what are you gonna do with legs? You ever seen cow legs? And
Well, you can eat drumsticks. I assume there's something similar with legs,
I
right?
suppose. I mean, parts of the rump, maybe. You gotta have a
Like
little bit of rump roast.
A leg stick or something. I don't.
That'd be a really big chicken wing. What do you call that? It's gotta be bigger than a buffalo wing. Giraffe wing?
Bison wing.
Basically the same thing.
Oh, is it?
I mean, bison and buffalo are
No.
like two sides of the same coin,
No,
aren't they?
bison are bigger than buffalo.
Are they really?
No, I don't know. Thought they were. You just go like a woolly mammoth
Okay.
wing. How's that? I know those were big.
Yeah, I'd buy that one.
Mammoth wings.
Mammoth wings.
We did it.
It sounds like I'd go to that restaurant.
We need to trademark that or something.
Mammoth wings?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd go for that.
Yeah.
Way bigger than buffalo.
Yeah, they have to be.
Yeah. I'm down. Okay.
All right. We did it.
We'd have to have our own sauce though.
Yeah.
The mammoth sauce.
Mammoth sauce.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep going then.
We can have our own mixed drinks called mimosa.
That's not terrible.
I'm saying it'd be pretty delicious.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, carry on. Sorry, I got carried away with the puns there.
Mm-hmm. You shall also take the one ram, and Aaron and his sons will lay their hands on the head of the ram. And you shall slaughter the ram and take its blood and sprinkle it around on the altar. Then you shall cut the ram into its pieces and wash its entrails and its legs and put them with its pieces in its head. And you shall offer up in smoke the whole ram on the altar. It is a burnt offering to the Lord. It is a soothing aroma, an offering by fire to the Lord. So I guess even at this time, which is, when when this was being written, the priests still didn't know how God actually worked. You know what I mean?
Remember these instructions are from God.
Yeah.
He wants barbecue.
I guess I appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, we're saying that the priests must have written this because that's how they were doing it.
I mean, that's my opinion.
And
yeah.
If that's the case, then they still didn't realize that God doesn't eat the sacrifice or whatever, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. Yeah, you're not wrong. And Leviticus makes it worse. Leviticus even describes God speaking about the sacrifice as though it is his food. In fact, he calls it the food of Yahweh. I know.
No wonder God was so quick to, who's on his side and stuff. He's probably famished.
Can you imagine how hungry he was before he met Moses?
Yeah, thousands of years or
must have been famished.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
He got a little peckish.
Dead.
I mean, he's patient though.
Yeah, that's why he needs all the sacrifices.
It is interesting though. They go back and forth between bulls and rams and whatnot, but I don't know. Have you ever had ram?
I haven't had bull either.
I've never had ram, but
I
feel like it would be a little bit gamey. Like bull, some cow sounds a little bit better, in some countries, the small lot farmers will actually give the cows massages, so that the meat's more tender.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm sure they can charge more.
Yeah, they probably do. Yeah,
right?
Sure they do.
Yeah.
Saying.
I like a good massage. I just don't want to be eaten afterward.
Not a bad gig. Just sit around eating grain, getting massages,
and then getting eaten.
Well, yeah, getting your throat slit and getting turned into meat's not great, but
there's always going to be a negative.
You can't live forever. Yeah, I agree. But the ram, always makes you wonder. Ram is weird too because ram's not really a super domesticated animal, is it?
I think so. They're usually pretty mean, aren't they?
Yeah, they're like goats, but more aggressive.
Yes, they are. Yeah, they got bigger horns.
I imagined that some people probably did own rams. They probably did raise rams. I have to assume that it was less common than cattle. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I heard that sometimes the rams, their horns will kind of curve over and grow and continue to grow and puncture their head, and they'll kill themselves that way.
It's a real problem.
Isn't that like the worst way you could think of dying?
That's the slow, painful death of your own horn growing into the side of your face.
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be the worst, actually.
Yes, it will.
And by the time you realize it's a problem, it's too late to try to like break it off.
Yeah.
You know, you have to break it off long before it gets there.
Mm.
Wonder if it's painful to break it off.
I don't really know. I don't think it. Well, I don't really know. Depends on where the quick is, right?
Yeah, I don't know where the quick is.
Yeah.
Got to be towards the base.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. Long and short of it is, God is he's into some gamey meat as well, not just the tender,
Well, we don't know
juicy
that.
steak.
We don't know that.
I mean,
We've never had ram.
fair point. Okay,
Right.
ram could be delightful.
Yeah, we should go to one of those international markets. Got some.
Okay, yeah. If you know a place where we can get some ram,
Yeah.
we'll try it.
I'll call around.
Do you think it's a little bit like lamb?
Probably.
I've had lamb.
Okay. I haven't had lamb because I don't like eating things that are cute.
I get that actually. It seems cruel.
It does, actually. Don't do it.
At least let them reach adulthood before we kill them and eat them.
100% true. I'm not joking. That is true.
And the older I get, the more I appreciate the vegans.
People who eat veal are monsters.
Yeah, it seems cruel, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like I still enjoy a good steak, but it's hard not. Hey, have you seen cows? They're so delightful, by the way. They're cute. They're like big dogs.
Yeah,
It really makes you think twice before eating one.
it does.
Yeah.
However, I will just say this. I've been trying some of those veggie burgers.
Mm-hmm.
They're not the same as hamburgers.
But they're okay.
It really depends.
If you get a good veggie burger, they're not bad.
It depends.
Gotta get a good one.
I mean, we got some of these bean ones made with black beans. Those are not bad.
The Boca burgers?
No, it's a different type. But
the Morning Star burgers?
I don't know. They're just black bean, but they're like spicy black bean burgers.
Okay.
And they're pretty decent. But like I bought something called it was like a harvest burger because I assumed all veggie burgers were just the same. But I bit into this true story. There's a little piece of a carrot in there.
I believe that.
I said, Valerie?
Actual veggies in the veggie burger.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
Yeah. So Valerie was having the black bean one, so we just switched. Ugh, can you believe that?
I'm saying I like a good veggie burger.
Yeah, I mean a good one is fine, but not one that has vegetables.
I do think humanity needs to get to a point where if we're going to eat meat, we're just having lab grown meat because
I mean they got that Impossible stuff that isn't lab grown, but it's apparently tasting pretty similar.
Yeah, people are starting to like it.
I would like to taste one, but they're like $7.
Yeah, they're kind of pricey.
And I don't want anything on mine.
I don't know if they're healthy though. I have to look into it.
No, they're not healthy.
But I could do some lab grown meat.
Yeah,
I'm down for that.
I'd rather have a veggie burger than lab grown. That's gross. Yeah. That's like growing the whole animal except for like the brain or something.
Eventually we're going to be growing organs.
Yeah.
In the lab, like in mass. Like in our lifetime, probably.
Probably not.
You'll be able to get like a replacement ear.
There's no way that's going to happen.
Yeah, it's happening.
No.
They're already doing it.
Not in our lifetime.
I'm telling you, it's happening. We're going to have warehouses of replacement human parts. Oh, you need a new foot? There you go.
Well, your body's still going to reject it. So.
Yeah, that's a good possibility, actually. Right. It's okay. We got drugs for that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's
yeah.
We're gonna have a lot of sidetracks this week. Let's read 19 and 20.
Then you shall take the other ram, and Aaron and his sons shall lay their hands on the head of the ram, and you shall slaughter the ram, and take some of its blood, and put it on the lobe of Aaron's right ear, and on the lobes of his sons' right ears, and on the thumbs of their right hands, and on the big toes of their right feet, and sprinkle the rest of the blood around on the altar. I'm sorry, the big toes of their right feet? What's the point of this? I know the big toes are the thumbs of the feet, but that still doesn't really explain it. Right ear, right thumb, right toe. I'm assuming this is something against left-handedness, right? The wicked lefties.
Yeah, there was some what's the word I'm looking for? there was some shade being thrown at lefties. Lefties weren't exactly favored.
Right.
Did you hear the nonsense about Trump though?
What's that?
When he got shot?
What's that?
Well, people were saying that because he had blood on his right ear,
Okay.
that this
Don't know.
was God symbolically
No,
anointing him
please, no.
to be priest over USA.
Please don't say that stuff.
Saying that's what
He
people
didn't
were
even get
saying.
shot.
Well, I mean, he got shot at.
Yeah, but he didn't get shot. That was the teleprompter. A piece of glass struck his ear.
Yeah.
You know how you know that? Because if he got shot with a bullet, he wouldn't be fine the next day.
Well, I don't think he got hit by it.
That's what I just said.
He got grazed by it.
No. It didn't even touch him. It was like a shrapnel, like a ricochet, some other thing.
Oh, really? I didn't know
The
that.
bullet hit the teleprompt.
Okay.
A piece broke off and sliced his ear.
Okay.
Yeah. Because, I mean, you got to think about it. Otherwise, his ear would have been, like, exploded.
True. If he actually got hit,
Right.
that's a good point. On the ritual, though, I think
Oh, are we talking about that now?
succinctly, yeah, succinctly, yeah. There you go. I think the most succinct explanation that I've seen is from Nahum Sarna. Was it Nahum Sarna that did this commentary? I forget. I think it might have been, but in the Jewish Publication Society commentary, which is pretty concise, it
Yes.
says the dabbing of blood of the sacrifice on the priest's extremities has its counterpart in Leviticus 14:14, which is fair. It says governing one who has recovered from severe dermatological affliction. There, the ceremony has a purification function. It is almost likely, uh, it most likely serves the same purpose here. The singling out of the ear, hand, and foot may well symbolize the idea that the priest is to attune himself to the divine word and be responsive to it in deed and direction and in life. My
Sounds like something Chat GPT would have said.
I know, right?
Okay.
My thought was that this was a purification ritual. Just like somebody that would come in who actually needed purification. It's kind of like how Jesus got baptized even though he didn't have any sins.
Right.
Right? Seems kind of like the same way. The purification ritual needs to be done to Aaron and to his sons to purify them for the big day before they can then purify others, if that makes sense. And so that was kind of how I was reading this. A lot of people take it to mean that it could be just purely symbolic. I don't know if it is symbolic. I'm reading it as an actual purification ritual, but it could be both.
Yeah, no, it's probably. I mean, the purification makes sense. You wouldn't symbolically put blood on somebody, right?
It seems weird that yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I do think it was probably just a slight against the lefties, but you know,
right.
I bet nobody back then would even admit they were left-handed, right? They'd be like, "Forget it, I'll be burned as a witch."
Yeah, that's a good point.
I'm writing with my left hand.
And they did do things with their right hand typically, but the weird thing is that it's also on the right foot, which is a weird thing to do. Why the right foot?
Now, of course, the right hand would have been the. I mean, I heard that you wiped your butt with your left hand, right?
I don't know, actually.
I thought that's.
I've heard that too, but
Okay.
I never fact checked it to know if it was true.
Yeah.
I assumed it was true.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's true.
So you purify the right hand because the left is your gross one.
I mean, that brings up a good point. We didn't talk about burying your dung out back, which we should have. We're already past it, but like, okay. In the whole bury your dung situation, let's imagine you go out to the outside of the city, you got to defecate, and you do your business, and use your hand to clean up or whatever.
Uh-huh.
Do you have to carry a bowl of water out there to like how does that work? Like do you just walk back into town with a dirty hand? Like how do
I mean, don't you use like leaves or something?
I don't know, you're in the desert.
Okay, yeah, cactus.
I mean, you got to use something.
Okay,
I mean, the likelihood that they used their hand seems pretty high, right?
that's gross, dude.
Or what if they just didn't wipe at all?
Yeah.
What if they just had dingleberries?
Can we please talk about something else?
I mean,
Please.
the
So
hygiene
gross.
in the ancient world had to
Right,
be
not great.
so bad.
Yeah.
So bad.
Yes.
Because if you don't have something to wipe with,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have a lot of choice. Either
Right.
have to use your hand or you have to not wipe, right?
Right. Yes.
So, I mean, isn't it weird that a book that is so obsessed with cleanliness never addresses how to properly wipe?
Yeah.
Don't you think that would be kind of important?
I'm guessing that wasn't a thing they did.
Maybe they didn't.
Yeah. Could you wipe with sand somehow? I'm just asking.
I
Would
don't
you?
know. I don't know if that's the thing you want to
Well,
do.
let me say this.
It's like a lot of chafing.
Let me say this. Now, a litter box is basically just sand. I mean, it's not sand, but you know what I mean. It helps with the clumping. It covers it up. Yada yada yada. I don't see why you couldn't wipe yourself with sand. Just get a fistful.
They
Huh?
get stuck in there.
Better than
It's tiny little granules. It's not the same as litter.
just. I just throwing ideas out.
That's gonna be awful.
All right, all right.
You've never had like sand stuck between your
I
toes?
have.
Imagine that in your butt.
Yes. I'm throwing ideas
It'd be
out
like the
there.
worst thing ever.
All right, maybe they didn't do that.
I start bleeding after a while.
All right, maybe they found leaves somewhere. I mean, there was vegetation, correct?
Had to be some.
All right, well, somebody was probably collecting the leaves and pressing them down and turning them into toilet paper.
Somehow I doubt that.
Yeah, but toilet leaves, toilet plants. I'm done.
Leaves, I would imagine, would be the go-to.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, just make sure they aren't like poison ivy or nothing. Be good.
But there's 2.5 million of them out there.
Well, maybe they share. Okay.
Oh,
I don't know.
I assume they had to use their hand and then wash with water.
Yeah. Or they could have just jumped in the water.
What water?
Well, they had to have some water.
I think they just have a well.
Really? That's where the Moses tapped the rock, turned into a well.
No, I don't think so. I'm saying I'm sure they would have had wells.
Well, they didn't have any water until Moses tapped that rock and made it.
Beersheba had like seven different wells.
Yeah, but that was not there. Remember how they needed Moses to knock on that rock so that it would break open and give them water?
Your point.
That's where they're getting their water from right now.
I don't know if that's the case, but it could be the case.
So where else would they be getting it from?
Well, I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Don't know.
I mean, otherwise they wouldn't have had to have bugged Moses and got him kicked out of the promised land. All right, I think we'll agree on that.
Okay. So the long and short of it is,
Don't shake hands.
if you got access to water, don't shake with the left hand.
Right.
And bury it out back.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Don't rub your eyes.
Okay.
All right.
I mean, could you imagine the priest went out and did his business and then came in and dipped the wrong hand in the blood and sprinkled it on the altar?
Yeah.
It ruined the whole thing. You got to start all over again.
That's right. Nobody would be forgiven.
Yahweh would be pissed off.
Yeah. Like, I can't forget.
No, obviously not.
Fecal flecks everywhere.
Oh, could you imagine? I would be very upset.
Yeah.
If I was Yahweh and they got fecal flecks in the blood that was sprinkled on the altar.
Uh-huh.
It seems like they'd get the Nadab and Abihu treatment.
It's a good thing nobody's watching.
Oh, fair
Or they
enough.
would stop watching it.
They turned off at fecal flex.
That's what did it to them. Nothing else.
All right, let's read. Where are we at?
Uh,
I think we're at 21.
is that possible? Yes, I think so.
Yeah,
Then you
21.
shall take some of the blood that is on the altar and some of the anointing oil and sprinkle it on Aaron and on his garments and on his sons and on his sons' sons and his sons' sons and their garments. And you shall also take the fat from the ram and the fat tail and the fat that covers the entrails and the globe of the fat liver and the 2 fat kidneys and the fat that is on them and the right thigh, for it is a ram of ordination.
Just like that.
ChatGPT says that a ram of ordination is a peace offering is apparently a sacrifice that you don't necessarily have to make. Except it might not always be true. So where the priests eat the animal with God together. That makes sense. Except I don't know where does the meat from the other sacrifices go? That's a good question, Dan. I thought the priests say all of the sacrifice.
I don't know if you should ask Chat GPT questions anymore.
Is that not a good answer?
Oh.
Tell me the answer, and I'll tell you if it's the same one then.
Well, what do you think ordination is?
I didn't look up the word. I just figured it was some sort of weird word that ChatGPT would tell me. Ordination.
Ordination is when like a religious figure is given official status. So for example, when I like if I took a job with a Lutheran denomination.
Oh, like ordained.
Yes.
Oh, that's where the word comes from.
Yeah.
So
this is an offering of ordination for the priests.
To show that they're like official and all that.
Basically, yeah.
So it's a type of peace offering then?
Yeah, it's definitely an offering still, but it's a specific offering for the ordination of the priest.
Okay. So I mean it was right. It just didn't say what it was for.
Right.
Or something.
Just an ordination offering.
So the priests eat that with God together. That makes sense, right?
It didn't necessarily say who's going to be eating it.
Okay.
But it is interesting that they make a lot of mention of the fat.
Yes.
Like they're really concerned with what you're doing with the fat.
Oh yeah. They love that stuff. We just throw it out now, right? That's the grossest part.
Yeah, we don't really eat the fat anymore. It used to be much more valuable. But now it's like a throwaway piece.
I bet they loved the gristle, huh?
You know, in some of the hadiths from the Islamic culture, they say that you can cure certain ailments using the fat of the Bedouin sheep. For example, they recommend taking the fat from the base of the tail to cure all of your sciatica pain.
No, that's stupid.
If only Harvard Medical School knew about that.
I mean, fat can be used to make candles, right?
I think so.
Or oil.
Sounds like a pleasing aroma.
Or oil.
Yeah.
So, I mean, back then it probably had a lot of uses. It's just now we use other things.
You can use it for frying. You can even use it for skin creams. I think they refer to it as beef tallow.
Man, I didn't want to put that on my skin. I think it would break out.
People used beef tallow as skin ointments for a long time.
And their face didn't just break out into tons of pimples and stuff.
Well, if your face can't handle oil,
yeah,
you're gonna get pimples. Some people have dry skin though, and oil is good for them.
Oh, my face is very oily.
Yeah, mine's not. I get dry skin. I got that dry, flaky skin.
Yeah. I don't know. We're done. All right.
Get that oily.
My skin's perfect. All right.
Italian skin. What kind of skin do you got? What's your ethnic background?
You know what? You know how some people actually have like a background, like from other countries. Americans don't. We're like, oh, we're like 5% German.
Sure.
And then we'll go around talking like we're German. But I don't know what I am. Just American.
Okay.
I'm what they call a mutt.
You're mutt.
Yeah.
A mutt American.
A mutterkin or something.
I tried. That's all I got.
Yeah.
Oh boy. All right, let's read 23 through 25.
All right. And 1 loaf of bread, and 1 cake of bread mixed with oil, and 1 wafer from the basket of unleavened bread which is set before the Lord. And ye shall put all these in the hands of Aaron and in the hands of his sons, and shall wave them as a wave offering before the Lord. Then you shall take them from their hands and offer them up in smoke on the altar on the burnt offering for a soothing aroma before the Lord. It is an offering by fire to the Lord.
Oh.
A wave offering. That's a new one. Are we talking like surfs up, dude? Because, surfs up. Because a surfer surfs up. All right. So apparently a wave offering was when you waved the sacrificed meat before the Lord and then ate it.
Yeah, that's actually
wow,
quite accurate. ChatGPT got something
he got
right.
one.
Although quite often it wasn't meat, it was typically a type of a grain.
It was a thing. So,
but he got most of it.
That's something.
It is definitely something.
So an animal is sacrificed. The priests eat the sacrifice. God forgives the people. Right?
Kind of. The wave offering is not to be confused with a sin offering.
Okay.
So I think this is one thing that might be kind of important to discuss. Not all offerings are for purification or for sins. Sometimes they're just like a goodwill offering.
If we're saying like, thanks for being great, right?
God is great.
Yeah.
Give us chocolate cake.
Is that how it works?
Something like that. So the wave offering, I don't think we don't want to conflate that with the sin offering.
That's kind of a ridiculous offering, right? You got a cake and you go, smells good, doesn't it, God?
Smells
Thank
really
you.
good.
And then you eat it.
Make a pleasing aroma.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, if you're going to a barbecue, you have to have sides.
Yeah.
You can't have more meat for your sides. You have to have wine and grain somewhere. So basically, he's setting up the 3-course meal.
That's nice of him.
Obviously.
I have 1 course and it's huge.
Can't have just meat.
No, you can't. You gotta have a salad.
You can't have any pudding unless you have your meat.
That's right.
So I mean,
that's from something. I don't know what it is.
It's from A Brick in the Wall by Pink Floyd.
They're pretty terrible.
You don't like Pink Floyd?
I don't think they have a single good song.
Oh boy.
I think they're actually one of the worst bands in existence.
Oh boy.
They're terrible.
Okay.
You know what I do like is the Jonas
Agree to
Brothers,
disagree.
though.
Oh.
They're going on tour. All right.
I'll get you tickets.
Really? Hey, they're too expensive. Sorry.
I was actually at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame when they got inducted.
Oh, really?
Not the Jonas Brothers. They'll never get in. They're horrible.
They don't
write real music.
I was excited there.
Like Hannah Montana nonsense.
I think they write their own music. I think so.
Mickey Mouse writes it for them.
I think Nick Jonas probably writes.
They just buy songs from other people and sing it.
No, you just don't know. You've never been in a boy, man. You wouldn't understand.
I don't expect to ever be in one.
Exactly. All right.
Anyways,
Yeah.
right. Pink Floyd
No.
reference. Anything else?
No, definitely not.
Okay.
So
So
there are like 15 plus types of offerings in the Old Testament.
Oh, there's a bunch.
And that is, so there are a lot of reasons to give an offering, apparently.
You're never without an offering to give.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're not compulsed to give all these offerings.
No.
But
you
really want Yahweh to give you favors.
Yeah.
You know.
It was like this was some sort of a type of bribery that didn't work.
It kind of is.
Wouldn't make any sense.
Right.
But
well, in the ancient world, this was the way that people thought you could get favor.
Curry favor.
Yeah, this was it. Yeah.
The rich get all the breaks.
Right. Imagine if you didn't have much.
Yeah, you'd have to sacrifice a pigeon or something,
Right.
which I think they did, right?
Yep. Or 2 turtle doves.
2 turtles or
Mm-hmm.
a partridge or something.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm going to continue.
Right. 26 and 27.
I mean, we're already over there, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Then you shall take the breast of Aaron's ram of ordination and wave it as a wave offering before the Lord, and it shall be your portion. You shall consecrate the breast of the wave offering and the thigh of the contribution which was waved and which was offered from the ram of ordination, from the one which was for Aaron and from the one which was for his sons. So I don't know what's going on, but so whoever God is talking to gets a ram's breast for his good work, I guess. I suppose this is on top of the manna and the quail. Maybe rams have really big breasts. I don't know.
So this is a really good point because remember, all of Israel is still eating manna and quail.
Yeah.
Carried away with big breasts.
Yeah, rams. All right, go ahead.
I must have missed a joke.
I thought you were gonna. No, because the ram's breasts are special. Not everybody gets Aaron and his sons.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Oh, go ahead.
So right. Yeah. So the priests eat pretty good.
Oh yeah.
Just be quite sure.
Yeah, because I mean, you have all these people constantly sacrificing, and they don't get to eat. Well, some of them they get to eat. They offer it, but then they eat it themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of them they don't, right?
Nobody eats quite as well as the priests.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing, though.
Mm-hmm.
You might be inclined to think that this is a system that really seems to only favor the priests. And while it does, also keep in mind that the priests don't get a tribal allotment.
Right, yeah.
They're just scattered
At this
about.
point, none of these people did either, right?
Not yet. They will.
So, I mean, these people aren't getting anything. They're just giving the priests.
Currently.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
You're currently right.
So in the future, some future that everybody there will be dead before they see.
Right.
I'm just saying.
Well, my point is this. There was some give and take.
Yeah, I know. I get it.
Give and take. The benefit of being a priest was you got well fed.
Mm-hmm.
The downfall is you didn't get land necessarily, and the other downfall was that you were held to a much higher standard than everybody else. And when we get to the historical books, that'll become more evident.
You had to rely on everybody else, right?
God gets pretty upset with his priests when they don't do what he wants.
Hey, I mean that makes sense, right?
They're the ones that got to toe the line.
And what about these priests in the real world? Are doing bad things. I would not want to face God after doing something.
Oh my God. Yeah. If you did what priests were doing to little boys and then woke up one day to face God, if there was ever a time to be afraid of God, that would be the moment.
Mm-hmm.
That's the time you'd be shaken in your robe.
Yeah.
I don't think priests wear boots.
Maybe not. They'd be shaking in their vestments.
Yeah. Oh boy. All right. Well, should we move on to verse 28?
Sure. It shall be for Aaron and his sons as their portion forever from the sons of Israel, for it is a contribution. And it shall be a contribution from the sons of Israel from the sacrifice of their peace offerings, their contribution to the Lord.
Forever.
So is this just the priest reminding everybody why they still get the best meat?
I think it is.
You know what I mean? Because probably at that point they're like, well, why do they get the best stuff? And they're like, guys, God said.
You got to remember, though, at this point, we're really just reading about the ordination sacrifices. These aren't sacrifices that are happening all the time.
Okay.
I mean,
well, that's true.
We do get there soon in just a couple of verses.
So people are not ordinated that often, I reckon.
Right, exactly.
Or
these are special occasions.
Yeah.
But once we get to verse 30 or 31, we'll get to some of the standard sacrifices.
Hey, we're going to get there.
I know. I said we're almost there.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I'll just keep going then.
Yeah, go ahead and read 29:30.
The holy garments of Aaron shall be for his sons after him, so that they may be anointed and ordained in them. For 7 days, the one of his sons who is priest in his place shall put them on when he enters the tent of meeting to minister in the holy place. Woo! It's good to know what holy garments Aaron's sons will wear.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also guessing that earlier in this book, we learned how these garments.
Yeah.
I was
Were you here for that
well,
that week?
I I actually just put 2 and 2 together when I read that. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
oh, we were reading about what they're. I didn't know what it was.
Yeah. Yeah, we
So,
learned.
like, oh,
Mhm.
it's like a thing where there's a beginning, middle, and it's
Yeah, look at that.
like a story.
That's nice, isn't it?
Yeah,
Look at you putting everything together.
I just love clothes. You know, not
Uh,
I'm not sure why I should care, but since I have no reason to care, that must mean someone else had a reason, right? So
mhm.
why did the priests care? What was their motive for including this?
Well, I think that this is just sacred ritual. The vestments were sacred to the lineage, and so when you wore them for your time period, they rotated to somebody else. And what we find here seems to be the priestly rotation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it says the vestments are going to be passed on to Aaron's sons after the ordination, and then let's see, the son who is priest in his place will wear them for 7 days when he comes into the tent of meeting. So it sounds to me like there's a 7 day rotation.
Say that again.
It sounds to me like there's a 7 day
No, I didn't mean
rotation.
say it again. I mean say it again. What does that mean? 7 day rotation for what?
The priests going in and out of the tent of meeting.
So they're in there for 7 days,
Seems that way.
and that's like their shift.
I think that is the way I would say it. Yeah.
And then they're like, okay, I'm done with my shift. It's your turn. Let me give you the nice vestments.
Mm-hmm,
Is that
mm-hmm.
what you're saying?
Yeah.
All right, it was a little confusing.
It does seem to suggest here that there's a process for passing the ordination on to your children,
Okay.
but it doesn't really give it much description other than it says it's going to be passed from Aaron to Aaron's sons
Mm-hmm.
and then their sons after them.
Right.
So it seems like it's going to be from son to son, rotating, every 7 days.
Yeah.
Or is saying that, see this, blah, 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 shall wear them 7 days when he comes into the tent of meeting to minister. Yeah, it really actually is kind of weirdly worded. It doesn't give you a whole lot of room to work with.
Very
Um,
small.
the JPS commentary says the 8 garments that are uniform of the high priest, as described in chapter 20, which we just read, are to be handed down from father to son to be worn for the successor's installation ceremony. So it's for this ceremonies of ordination, which is also to last for 7 days. Okay, so that's interesting. He's saying that just the ceremony itself lasts for 7 days. And then it references Numbers chapter 20, verse 22 through 29. It says, narrates the death of Aaron and the investiture of his sons as the succeeding high priest. Moses stripped Aaron of his vestment and put them on his son Eleazar. So that's really interesting because the way our version reads in Exodus 29, it doesn't really say it the way it was explained in the commentary. It sounds like they're just rotating every 7 days, but I don't know if that's really what it meant.
What did it mean?
What's your translation say? Yours is slightly different. It says, for 7 days, one of his sons, who is priest in his place, shall put them on when he enters the tent of meeting. But it's probable here that what he's saying is that during the ordination, then they're going to get the garments for 7 days.
Then what?
And then the ordination process is over.
And then they won't wear them ever again?
Not until the next ordination.
That'll be some.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ordained once, right?
Yeah. So, and thinking about that now, if I go back and read it in my translation, it says,
Okay.
"The sacred vestments of Aaron shall be passed on to his sons after him, and they shall be anointed in them and ordained in them. The son who is priest in his place shall wear them 7 days when he comes to the tent of meeting to minister to the holy place." Okay. Now we've read it 4 times. I can definitely see where it sounds more like he's saying during the ordination, you'll have to wear the sacred vestments for 7 days.
Yeah.
That seems to be what he's saying. Not that
Okay.
you switch back and forth every 7 days.
Well, that would have made sense.
It did make sense. I think we were just not putting all the pieces
Yeah.
together.
Mm.
Yeah, I think that's a better reading of the text.
Yeah, you'd want to clean them or something after 7 days.
Right?
Right? I don't.
Eventually you'd have to.
Yeah.
Let's read the next section.
We're gonna
29,
be able
30.
to 48 verses.
Yeah, I don't know if we're gonna have time to finish all of it. No, I thought it might be a good time to take a break after chapter 30 because we got a new section starting in 31. Yeah, 31 starts the new section.
Most staff.
No, that's chapter 32. I'm saying verse 31.
So okay, so you want to do up to 31.
Okay.
All right, I get you now.
Mm.
All right. So 20.
29 and 30.
I think we missed something. Right? Or
Did we?
I thought we did.
Oh, we just read 29 and 30.
No, scroll up, would you? Okay, so
He shall wear them 7 days when he comes into the tent of meeting.
we did it.
Oh, we just did.
Good job.
And then we'll do this. We'll do the remainder of this one next week.
And maybe the other chapter 2.
Yeah, let's see what's actually in 30. 30 is not terribly long.
Yeah, it is.
Still pretty long.
Yeah.
38 chat. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll start at 6, everybody. So be here at 6 sharp.
It'd be a long one. Well, I mean, some interesting stuff at least in there. The sacrificial laws are going to get even more intense when we get into Leviticus.
But more to the point, we're going to talk about the holy incense.
Oh yeah.
And I got a lot about that.
Mm-hmm,
I know I shouldn't, but it's kind of interesting.
It really is, actually.
Yeah, like what the ingredients are in.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm down.
Yeah.
I'm down. Actually, we know pretty well what was in the incense.
I know. I'm going to tell you.
Okay. There's some tie-ins to Jesus even.
I did a lot of work to figure it out, and then I asked ChatGPT, and he told me everything.
Right, yeah.
So I really need to just stop doing things and have ChatGPT.
Okay. Sounds good. Farm it out to ChatGPT and see what happens.
Why not?
What could go wrong?
Nothing.
All right, guys. I think that's all for the week. We almost made it through our chapter, but we had a little bit of a late start, and it was a long, heavy chapter, and we got rabbit trailed a little bit. But we appreciate you.
Yeah, I'm sure it was more rabbit trails. Anyhow, it's great.
Well, Santa got weighed down by his heavy sack, so we.
Of a big sack. All right.
Thank you so much, guys. We will